Hi everyone, welcome to our third episode of the season. My name is Gabriel Ha. I'm a program manager on the Visual C++ team, and on behalf of some of the developers on the team, I'll be showcasing some additional coding productivity features that are now available in the Visual Studio 14 CTP number 2. Hope you guys will enjoy learning about the features as well as some tips and tricks in using them. The first feature that I'd like to showcase is the Implement Pure Virtuals feature. Some of you may be familiar with a similar feature called Implement Interface, such as that in C#. Interfaces aren't an explicit construct in C++, but the equivalent is any construct like an abstract class or a struct containing one or more pure virtuals. Since you can instantiate a class containing unimplemented pure virtuals, the Implement Pure Virtuals feature is essentially a macro that stubs all the definitions preventing you from being able to instantiate a class, and also encourages good coding practices as well. So I have some code here. iFoo is an abstract class, iBar is a struct, and then we have my class down here, which inherits from iFoo and iBar. And over here in my CPP file, you can see that I'm attempting to instantiate an instance of my class, but I can't, and as the compiler is telling me, I basically have unimplemented pure virtuals, and I can't do that. So I've inserted different kinds of virtual functions in iFoo and iBar, and the reason I did this is to demonstrate that the Implement Pure Virtuals feature doesn't just blindly insert every virtual function that it finds in your inherited constructs. So to activate the feature, I'm going to go to my class here. On the class definition, right-click, click on Refactor, and then say Implement All Pure Virtuals for my class. So the four pure virtual functions have been declared in the class definition, and their corresponding definitions have been put in the CPP file. And again, this is because we try to follow good coding practices with our features, including putting the keyword override after each function to indicate that the function has been overridden. You can see that we have comment delimiters indicating which sets of functions came from which inherited construct. So these two functions came from iFoo, these two functions came from iBar. And if you look back over at the definitions, for each definition that has a non-void return type, we've stubbed in a default value. And this is so you have something to work with if you don't want to go through every single function and provide a return statement. You can just get going with whatever you're doing. And you also notice in the output window that the feature tells you what functions have been created, and you can double click on these entries and it'll take you there. So this should be all great and good. You can just do a build. You can show that this will build successfully. And I'd like to take some time to just point out some nuances of the feature. First of all, if you do an undo at this point, you'll see that everything gets removed, both the declarations in the header file and the definitions in the CPP. So, that's nice in case we did something that you didn't want. You can also implement just the pure virtuals from one of the bases. So in this case, when I right-click on iFoo, the menu option has changed to Implement Pure Virtuals for this base, and so it'll just put those in. I can click on iBar and do the same thing. And if I do an undo, just for the iBar, you can go to my class and try to do everything, because that's the idea. And we won't put in duplicate functions because the feature knows that, well, these two functions have already been implemented. One other thing I'd like to point out is, because this example we're trying to follow good coding practices, having all of this class definition stuff in the header, if you were to have this information instead in the CPP file and try to do the same thing, so what you'll get is the feature puts the definitions into the class definition, so you don't have the separation between the declarations and definitions. You can see that nothing has changed over in the header file. And that's how we handle the case where the class definition is in a CPP file. And just for kicks and giggles, let's see what happens when we try to run the feature on constructs that don't have pure virtual functions. So first, I'm going to undo the changes I just made. I'm just going to run a little personal script here to change all of those to non-pure virtual functions. And we'll do the same thing and try to run the feature, and you'll just see that you'll get an error message that says my class does not inherit unimplemented pure virtual elements, which is the case. So that is the feature. Hope you guys will enjoy it. For our second demo, I'd like to feature the Move Definition Location feature. Some of you might be familiar with a feature called Move Implementation to Source, and essentially the Move Definition Location feature is sort of the same thing. So to activate the feature, we can go to a function here, right-click on it, refactor, and say Move Definition Location. Now you notice before I perform this operation that my solution doesn't have a CTP file of the same name. And so when I use this feature, it is going to create that file, and then it's going to put it into the CTP file. Code peek comes up, so you can see exactly what happened. You'll notice that the original definition has been converted into a for declaration, and then the definition, of course, has been moved into move definition location.cpp. So you might be wondering at this point why the feature is called Move Definition Location and not Move Implementation to Source. Well, the reason for this is because we can actually move it back to the header if you wanted to. So here now we're in the CTP file. I'm going to right-click, refactor, and say Move Definition Location, and it's going to move it to the header file. Now notice that in this case, because we moved it from a CTP to our header file, the definition is removed from the CTP file and entirely placed into the header file. And the reason for this is following good coding practices. In general, if you go from a header to a source, you should have the for declaration still in the header. But in the case where you'd want to move a definition from a source to a header, we're going to assume we don't want it in the source file anymore, so we just remove it completely for you. So as a shout out to a previous feature, Create Declaration Definition, that feature had a batch operation mode where you could do multiple functions at once. And the Move Definition Location feature also has a similar functionality. So I'm just going to replicate foo a couple of times, call this foo2 and foo3. Just going to save that real quick. And as you can see, the CTP file itself doesn't have those functions in it. So to use the batch operation, just select the functions that you want. You don't actually have to be that precise. And you can say Move Function Definition. Here in the output window, we can see that stuff successfully happened. And again, code peek doesn't show up in this case because the definitions might have been created in different files, and we currently don't have a way to show you multiple files. But you can see in the CTP file that those definitions have indeed been created. So that's it. Very simple feature, but hopefully you guys will enjoy using this one as well. The last thing I'd like to showcase in today's episode are the improvements to the Find in Files feature in Visual Studio. Find in Files is a somewhat augmented version of the regular Find feature that is generally activated by pressing Control F in almost every Windows program that has any sort of text navigation. Instead of taking you through results one by one, Find in Files puts all the search results in its own output window so you can see all the results at a glance. The first improvement we've made to Find in Files involves being able to append subsequent search results to previous ones. If you ran two different searches with the old Find in Files and you wanted to compare the results, the first search result would disappear after you ran the second search, which usually relegated the user to having to copy the results of the first search into something like Notepad and then run the second search. In fact, for the old Find in Files, we added a second Find Results window for this purpose, but it was still a little tedious as you potentially still had to frequently modify the result options to preserve one set of results and not the other. With the new Find in Files, which you can find under Edit, Find and Replace, or activate with Control-Shift-F, you can find under the Result Options section a checkbox allowing you to append results. Now when you run your searches, you'll have both sets of results available in one window, and any subsequent search results as well. The second improvement to the feature involves being able to interact more with the Find Results window, aside from just being able to double-click on entries and see the search results that it corresponds to. You can also collapse the search results from particular results. You can do everything at once by right-clicking and saying Toggle All Outlining and perform the same command to collapse everything again. In addition, if there are certain search results that you would prefer not to see in your results, for example, if I'm only concerned about integer variables with alpha and a number in the variable name, and I have the search result here that I would prefer not to see in the results, I can right-click on it and just say delete. And the delete key and backspace also work for this, and it's pretty flexible as well. Suppose that I were performing a search on variables that are called eta, E-T-A, and I do a search on that. You'll see in the search results here that everything that was called beta also gets included in the search results. And if I want to remove those from my results, I can highlight them. And for this example, I'm just going to press the backspace key, and you'll see that all those results get deleted as well. You can also delete entire groups of search results if you go to the spot where the outline begins. So if I'm on this line right here, for example, and I hit delete, it'll delete all the search results from that category. And this pretty much wraps up the Find and Files improvements. Hope you guys will enjoy them. That concludes our episode for today. Be sure to try out the features and let us know what you think in the comments.